I was cruising down the winding Blue Ridge Parkway when it happened. His last desperate act of pain wasn't a choice, it was a surrender. We're talking about a magnificent white-tailed deer that wore a heavy truck tire around its neck for 2 years. The horror started instantly. That morning, the sun was perfect. The air was crisp. It was the kind of morning where you feel fully alive. Then that massive creature, a white-tailed buck with a magnificent rack of antlers, darted onto the pavement. I slammed the brakes. My old Ford F-150 stopped just 10 feet away. The tires screamed, but the silence after was deafening. He didn't run. He stood, panting. His powerful body was trembling, slick with sweat. I immediately knew. This was not a startled animal. This was an exhausted soul, a creature at the absolute end of its endurance. I moved slowly. Every instinct told me to be quiet, to be calm. I didn't want to spook him. But as I got closer, I froze. A rusted, mud-caked pickup truck tire was strapped around his neck like a grotesque collar. It was shocking. This beautiful symbol of the wilderness, wearing a discarded piece of human waste. It was a slap in the face, a violation. I pulled out my water bottle and an old hunting knife from the glove compartment. I quickly cut the bottle in half to make a makeshift bowl. I poured water, carefully setting it down. He took one step. He tried to lower his head. Then a short, painful groan, a sound of pure agony. He instantly snapped his muzzle up. And that's when I saw it. Bright scarlet blood oozing from beneath the tire's edge, and a glint of rust. A piece of the internal steel cord was protruding, digging into his flesh every time he tried to drink. He wasn't on the road because he was lost. He was here because he was starving for water and desperate for help. I was alone on the parkway with a bleeding, panicked animal. But the most terrifying discovery about that tire was yet to come. Stick around. This is where the real struggle began. My first instinct, the human instinct, was to tear that thing off. I tried to grab the smooth rubber. I pulled. I strained. It wouldn't budge. My hands slipped. The buck jerked its head sharply and I stumbled onto the asphalt. It was impossible. The branching antlers were too wide, too majestic. The rack was his cage. I knew I had to call for help. I was absolutely helpless. My knife was useless. My strength was useless. I pulled out my phone and called the State Fish and Wildlife Service. The dispatcher told me to stay put. He said a game warden was on his way. Warden Mike. He told me to keep my distance, but my heart wouldn't let me. I stood there for 20 agonizing minutes. 20 minutes of pure anxiety. I watched him. He didn't even try to reach the fresh grass at the roadside. It was too painful. He just stood, swaying slightly, conserving every ounce of his energy. Every minute felt like an hour. The silent suffering was the worst kind of torture. Warden Mike arrived in his official state truck. He was solemn. He walked around the majestic buck, examining the terrible collar. He shook his head. My God, Doug. This buck has been walking around like this for an incredibly long time. Look at the fur. It's completely rubbed raw. The skin is weeping. He loaded a tranquilizer dart. He approached cautiously, and with a quick, practiced movement, the dart found its mark in the deer's thigh. We waited. 5 slow minutes. The deer swayed, his eyes half closed, but he remained standing, a testament to his stubborn, wild endurance. Warden Mike tried to twist the tire with both hands. It wouldn't move an inch. It stuck fast, he sighed. I asked him why the tire looked so abnormally heavy. It looks like concrete, Mike. It's too heavy for just rubber. He peered inside the tire's wide mouth, using the sun's glare. His eyes went wide. Mud, Doug. Tons of it. He's been carrying this tire for 2 years, maybe more. In that time, every time he walked through a swamp or a creek, the mud, the pine needles, the twigs, the moss, it all compacted. It's dense, it's literal rock-hard concrete. He pulled out a small, sharp instrument and scraped a piece out. It was solid. We realized the full, terrifying truth. This wasn't just a plastic collar. This animal had been walking for 2 years with a 40-pound weight strapped to its neck. That's like wearing a cinder block. Every minute, every step. It was a torture of relentless, unimaginable magnitude. The true weight of the tire was 40 pounds of solid mud, but we soon discovered that 40 pounds was nothing compared to the deadly steel inside. We needed the big guns. Stay with us. Mike grabbed a heavy-duty hacksaw from his truck. His initial plan was now clear. "There's no other way, Doug," he said. "We have to cut through the rubber. We have to make a channel for the antlers to slide through." He started sawing. Shh, shh. The sound was terrible, the sound of desperate hope meeting hard rubber. It felt wrong to inflict more pain on a sedated animal, but this was the only path to freedom. Mike sawed for a minute straight. He stopped. He was already sweating profusely, his breath coming in short gasps, wiping his brow with the back of his glove. "I can't cut it, Doug." He sounded defeated. His voice cracked with frustration. He showed me the blade. It had barely nicked the surface of the rubber. "There's a steel radial cord inside this rubber, the kind they use to fortify the heavy-duty tires. A hacksaw won't touch it. It's like trying to cut a metal grate with a butter knife. The core of this thing is solid steel." The deer stood still, a majestic, enduring monument to its own suffering. We were stuck. We couldn't pull it off because of the antlers, and we couldn't cut it because of the steel. The system had won again. I knew we had to buy time. The sedative wouldn't last forever. "Mike, we have to lighten the load," I urged him. "We remove that mud first. That's 40 pounds we can take off. Maybe if it's lighter, we can get better leverage and a better angle for whatever tool is coming next." Warden Mike agreed. We worked side by side. I stood next to the massive animal, gently stroking the fur between his massive antlers, talking to him, whispering calming words. He felt unnaturally heavy, unnaturally solid. Mike began to scrape the compacted dirt out with his hands. It flew out in hard, rock-solid chunks. Clumps of ancient pine needles, solidified moss, bits of gravel. We were excavating a living history of pain. As Mike was digging, I realized our danger wasn't just the tire. The longer the buck stayed sedated, the more vulnerable he became. "Mike, the sedative is wearing off soon, and the sun is getting hotter. We're deep in the Blue Ridge. The black bears, the bobcats, they follow the weakness." My heart pounded. The buck was a sitting target. We had to rush. The real lion of the forest was circling the compromised prey. We removed everything we could reach, but most of the mud was packed so hard we couldn't dig it out without tools. And even with the tire lighter, it still wouldn't fit over the antlers. We were out of options. Warden Mike, desperate and exhausted, wiped his hands on his pants. "That's it, Doug. We need real power. We need hydraulic shears. We need the jaws of life. I'm calling the local volunteer fire department." The next 20 minutes felt like an eternity compressed into a ticking clock. The deer was breathing heavily, his muscles occasionally twitching. I was terrified the sedative would wear off before help arrived. My mind raced. What if he wakes up? What if he bolts into traffic and gets killed trying to escape? I just kept stroking his neck, my fingers tracing the deep, raw furrow the tire had worn into his flesh. It was a silent promise, a lifeline, a vow that I wouldn't leave him. Every second was a tribute to his impossible survival. He was a champion of endurance, and we were fighting to keep his crown. The clock was ticking. The lion was close. We needed the power of community to overcome the cruelty of nature and human garbage. When the VFD arrived, the tension was unbearable. Finally, the sound. Not the whine of an ordinary vehicle, but the deep, powerful rumble of the engine. A massive red fire truck, the symbol of our local, tight-knit community, pulled up. The sight of that truck brought a wave of pure, visceral relief. 2 local volunteer firefighters hopped out. These were local men, veterans, fathers, pillars of the community who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. They brought the huge silver and red hydraulic shears, the jaws of life, the very tool they use to save lives in car accidents. The first firefighter, Chief Pete, a man whose face was set in a grim expression of determination, placed the massive blades onto the smooth, curved edge of the tire. He tried to squeeze the handle, slowly at first. The tool slipped off the smooth rubber with a horrible screech. "It's too smooth," Pete yelled over the whine of the shears motor. "I have nothing to grab onto. It'll slip and damage the animal's neck." We were defeated again. A tool of ultimate force, rendered useless by a simple, smooth curve of rubber. But I had been studying that tire for hours. I knew its weakness. "Wait, use the hollow!" I shouted, pointing to the scraped-out groove where Mike and I had excavated the mud. "Use the jagged, exposed edge where the cord is closer to the surface." My voice was rough, strained, but absolutely certain. Chief Pete looked at me, a brief nod of respect for the civilian who had done the groundwork. Warden Mike and the second firefighter stabilized the mighty buck's massive head, holding it steady and whispering low, comforting words. I stepped back, ready to pull the buck away if he twitched in the final second. Chief Pete repositioned the shears precisely into the rough, exposed channel. The blades settled. He took a deep, steadying breath. Then he pressed the handles. Hard. A sharp, awful, metallic crunch filled the air, the sound of metal fighting metal. Then a dry, distinct snap. The steel cord on one side had finally broken. The tire shifted violently, but its dense, solidified core held firm. It refused to let go. Pete didn't hesitate. He switched the shears to the exact opposite side, aiming for the second reinforcement. He pressed down again with all his might. The hydraulic fluid hissed under the pressure. A second, more violent snap. The tire split cleanly in half. Warden Mike and the second firefighter, their faces a mix of triumph and disbelief, grabbed the two halves. They pulled them apart. The grotesque collar fell to the asphalt with a heavy, dull thud. The sound echoed throughout the valley, a sound of finality, of an unspeakable burden being lifted. The buck, still under sedation, seemed to instantly relax, his massive shoulders slumping in sudden, unexpected relief. One of the firefighters, the younger one, tried to lift the half tire with one hand and struggled mightily. "That thing is heavy," he whistled, "like a cinder block." I ran back to my truck and grabbed the spring scale, the old one I always keep for weighing fish on camping trips. We weighed the two halves right there. 42 pounds. It was 2 cinder blocks. It was a bowling ball. It was a 4-year-old child. The small crowd that had gathered gasped. It was more than anyone could have possibly imagined. The visual proof of 2 years of relentless torture. The tire was off. The lifelong sentence was over. But the true emotional peak was still coming, the moment we saw what freedom looked like for this magnificent animal. You won't want to miss the final, perfect act of gratitude. Mike gave him the preventative antibiotic shot. Then, the final, crucial shot. The antidote to bring him out of his twilight, vulnerable state. We all held our breath. My heart was pounding not from exertion, but from fear. What if he panicked? What if the sudden weight loss destabilized him? What if the pain of the raw skin made him bolt blindly? We stepped back, giving him space, watching the majestic animal slowly returning to awareness. Half a minute passed. He started blinking more frequently, his large, intelligent eyes refocusing. He slowly raised his magnificent head, testing the muscles of his neck. He turned his muzzle toward a small puddle of fresh water Mike had poured. He cautiously lowered his head. He lowered it all the way to the water, without a sound of pain, without a groan of suffering. The movement was slow, deliberate, a moment of profound realization for the animal itself. He drank, slowly, then greedily. He drank the way a soul starved for 2 years drink. He drank as if he couldn't get enough, as if testing the reality that this life-sustaining act was now, finally, pain-free. Then he lifted his head. He looked left. He looked right. He rotated his powerful neck, checking that the range of motion was truly, physically back. He stretched his neck, a simple, small movement that represented an ocean of gratitude. He took a few wobbly steps, his gait noticeably lighter, his body no longer burdened by the immense, self-created tumor of mud and steel. He walked over to a metal road sign. He positioned his neck, and he began to rub his neck against the sign. He was scratching himself. Warden Mike smiled, the biggest, warmest smile I had seen all day. "He's scratching himself properly," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The first real, pain-free scratch he's had in 2 years." It was a simple act of profound relief. That moment, that single mundane scratch, was the purest expression of freedom we could have ever witnessed. He gave a final short snort through his nostrils, a sound of affirmation. Then he turned and walked into the thick woods, not in a frantic dash, but calmly, his massive head held high. He was whole. He was free. One of the firefighters picked up the two halves of the tire, still shaking his head in disbelief. How did he even manage to walk with that for 2 years? Mike explained, his voice now calm and authoritative. Some careless person tossed this tire into the woods. He put it on when he was young, during the brief window when he shed his antlers. When the new rack grew, he was trapped. It was heavy. And when the steel cord broke through and started cutting him, every sip of water, every bite of grass was unbearable pain. He jumped onto the road in a last-ditch effort to find help. We found him just in time. Another 2 or 3 days, and his heart would have simply given out. I stood and watched until the last flicker of his white tail disappeared between the trees. The encounter lasted less than 3 hours, but it was a lifetime of pure compassion and redemption. This majestic animal, tortured by human waste, was saved by human decency. And in saving him, we all felt a piece of our own burden lifted. Friends, we are all part of the natural world. This tire was a symbol of human carelessness, but the swift, coordinated action of a retired man, a game warden, and a local volunteer fire crew was a powerful symbol of human decency and community resolve. Compassion is the sharpest tool we have, and when we use it, we find the strength to cut through any obstacle. If this incredible story of endurance and the collective power of people coming together to save one magnificent life touched your heart, if you believe in the power of a happy ending and the value of a single life, please hit that like button, share this video with fellow animal lovers, and don't miss our next video where we explore the hidden heroes saving the wildlife of the Blue Ridge. Thank you for watching, and remember to always carry a knife in your glove compartment. And always, always look out for the creatures who cannot ask for help.